Hi guys, Jason here on the udder farm. I'm actually on the trial property today, guys. What I want to go through, guys, is I'm bringing new livestock onto the property, and I've got a process which I go through every time I bring new livestock, whether it be cattle or sheep or anything for that matter, onto a property. So I like to quarantine my animals up to 7 days. 7 days is generally the minimum. There's a reason why, and I'll go through that when I get up closer, guys. But also, when it comes to quarantine, you can assess the temperament of the animal, number one. You can assess the body condition score of the animal, number two. And also, you can have a look at their health and general well-being whilst they're in the quarantine state. So, the breed of animal I've got, guys, or cattle, I won't give it away, but it's more of they classify it as more of a boutique breed. I haven't got a commercial market for these animals. I'm sure there are commercial markets out there for these animals, but it's not cattle that I would have purchased or gone out of my way and purchased. Just doing it for really helping a friend out, really. They have no longer need these animals on their property, and I think life just gets in the road sometimes, so they haven't got the time to spend which they wanted to on the animals, so they just want them to go to a good home. So I've taken them on board to help the guys out, and also I'll hopefully get a couple of calves bred out of them. So without further ado, guys, we'll go in. I'll introduce you to them. There they are. They're actually belted Galloway, and what they are is belted Galloway are primarily a pasture animal. So that's handy, guys. They definitely don't need grain to feed these animals, which is a huge cost savings. They grow to about 400 to 600 kilos, which maxes out in pounds to 900 pounds. So there's absolutely no reason why these animals can't survive on grass alone. So it's more money in your pocket, and you won't need to be buying grain. Remember, guys, they're herbivores, they're not grainivores. So the actual meat they produce, guys, it's a lean quality marbled beef. So I've looked into it further, guys, and what they're saying is the linoleic acid, which is an omega-6 that they produce, if you compare that on the omega-3 scale, the beef comes out at a ratio as one of the most healthiest, with a ratio of 3 to 1, making it comparable to fish or chicken in a healthy diet. So this is day 8, guys. I've actually started to introduce them out into cell grazing now, so I'm happy whatever was in their system has been flushed out. So they've been in the yards here, guys, for 7 days. These yards have been doing the grass, chewing it down. I've been keeping an eye on them. The reason why I say 7 days, guys, is I'll show you down here. So this is one of their first poos they did when they first come in here. So I kept it just specifically to show you guys without cleaning it up. So if you have a close look, guys, you can see right there that grain. Over there, more grain. So these animals shouldn't need grain. So I'm not sure whether they actually gave them the grain, because I know they locked them up the night before. I'm not sure whether they gave them the grain that night so they had something to do until I come and pick them up, or whether they've been fed grain the whole time. But a carcass weight, guys, of 400 to 600 kilos or 900 pounds maximum purely does not need grain at all, guys. They can survive on pasture. And when I was up there, guys, I had a look around the property. I took the liberty of going up, picking them up, and I reckon 70 to 80% of the pasture was wooded weeds and obnoxious weeds. So they didn't have a great deal of pasture to choose from, guys, so perhaps they had been supplementing grain over pasture because the quality of the pasture wasn't there. So here's another one, guys. This is one of the other first ones they done as well, guys. You see there's a bit of grain there. Not as much, I can't see as much in here, guys, as I did at the top, but there's grain in there, guys. Some over here, bit in there. So I know that poo there they just did on day 8. So what I'll do in comparison, I haven't fed them grain. I'll open that one up. Yeah, look at that, guys. Absolutely not a grain in sight. So I did one yesterday, guys, and day 7 there was nothing there. Day 6 there was a little bit. So I know it takes 6 days, 7 days to be on the safe side for anything which is in the 4 compartments, the 4 stomach compartments of the animal to pass through. And the reason why, I'm just showing you that grain, stating that these animals don't need grain. But the concern is if it takes 6-7 days to clear any wastage or any grain they've had from their system, it takes the same amount to get rid of any unwanted weeds, which they've also chewed weed seeds. So I did see a fair few weed seeds up there, guys, so I know it is in their system. So it's a biosecurity risk bringing new cattle onto your property, especially from a property you don't know the history of. So the biosecurity risk, not only on the seeds they bring in, it's also on the health as well, guys. That's why you don't want to introduce them to your herd straight away. So it's a biosecurity risk is why I've locked them up, and the health issues. One of them had a runny nose, which is this one over here. It had a runny nose and a bit of a cough, and the mucus that was coming out of the nose was white, which is telling me it had either a bacterial issue, or it possibly could have been stress. Had a bit of a cough, so it could have had lungworms. This one over here was more of a concern. It was limping, and apparently it hurt itself when it was coming into the dam. I don't agree with livestock and dams either, guys. I'll be fencing mine off and give them fresh water, because they tend to defecate and urine and pee in dams, and then all your livestock will drink of that, guys. So it's not fresh, clean water. As you can see, this one's very skinny. Had no mucus, but it was limping, and I can see the hip bone, pin bones and back bones. It's got a bit of condition on now because it's had good grass to chew on in the last 7 days, but I'm still not happy because I want to take them both over the bull. And really, to put your livestock over bull, they've got to be in good condition, guys. You want them at least a body score of between 5 to 7. I'll go into more of the body score, guys, when I get them in the crush, and I'll show you what I'm looking at. So whilst we're on the subject of germination, guys, what I want to show you is down here. This cow patty, if you have a look here, guys, right there, and right there, guys, that would probably be a 5-day-old patty, and as you can see, that is starting to germinate. And that is the very reason why you want to quarantine them in a confined area, say yards, for the first 7 days, guys, because they really need to get rid of that weed seed before they get out into those pastures. Because can you imagine if they were continually grazing that whole area in the first 7 days, when I just showed you that it takes a good 6, if not 7 days to get rid of anything out of those 4 compartments of those stomachs. You're going to have weeds in that entire area now you need to manage, instead of, as I showed you, just a small yard area. When I was opening these girls' poos up when they first got here, like I said, they were separated 3 or 4, as they were like constipation. They weren't coming out in one fluid motion. They were stopping and starting, and it was broken up. So that's telling me that there wasn't much protein, which means they weren't getting much grass or much protein from the grass, or if there's any grass, they were eating it all up there, guys. They were struggling to have a good forage. So here, as you can see, that one I opened up before, guys, it's starting to group together now. There was one patty. It's still higher than I like. I like them to be 2 inches, 2.5 max. But it's going to take time, guys, because these animals are 9 years old, so I've been told. So if they've been on that land for, say, 7 out of those 9 years, and they haven't been getting good forage or pasture to graze on, that rumen is nowhere near working to capacity or 100% capacity. So as I expect, these cows will graze here for, I'd say, the next 4 to 5 weeks, and I'll check their body condition again and see if they're ready to go to the bull. And I'll also keep an eye on their poos. I'm expecting it now. They are coming out, as I showed you that other one big lump now instead of separate poos. So they're starting to get protein, the colour, the moisture's back. But I expect it to see, like I said, a maximum of one poo 2 to 3 inches high with that nice ponding. Then I know that the rumen is working in good condition. We'll go on a temperament, guys. When I first got these animals, which is normal for any animals, is they're a bit spooky because they're used to one owner. But as I'm standing here now, I'm talking, these girls have got their head down eating, apart from that one now because the dog just spooked her. But if you're judging temperament, guys, you should be within a couple of meters of these animals, and they shouldn't take any notice of you. They should just be head down, bum up, chewing that grass. If you've got a cow or a bull which is head up, ears pricked, backing away and running in the paddock, that's a cow you want to get rid of, guys, because it's a trait that you won't get rid of, guys. That is just a spooky cow, and it have a tendency to pass on through other cows. If you get new calves coming along and they're beside that cow, then they'll take that trait, and then they have a tendency to be spooky as well, guys. So you really want to get that out of your herd to start with, guys. The temperament's got to be relaxed, be able to walk around the animals, you know, not necessarily pat them. You know, these ones here were, I can pat these ones. I'll show you. Hello, girl. Hello, darling. Hey? Because the owner used to pat them regularly, guys. So I've got one cow that I can pat. We spend a lot of time with her because mum had issues, and we sort of spend a bit of time raising her and hand feeding her. So but as long as they're quiet, guys, you don't need to be able to pat your animals. They should be able to stay there and eat while you're in the paddock with them. Right, guys, well, so that's temperament. The last thing I'll go through now is body score. I'll let them have a eat, and when they're ready, they generally find they go out here when it's a lot cooler. So it's been 28 degrees over the last 3 or 4 days. Beautiful, but we're expecting 30 odd degrees now, 30 to 34 this coming week. So because they're black in nature, I wouldn't own a black cow, guys. That's where I am, because it is harsh on them when it comes to heat. And as you can see, there's not much shade here at all on the trial property. That's why I've built laneways to get them back down so they can get shade during the day. Right, guys, I want to run through the body conditioning score before I get the girls up the chute and do the inspection. The way I'm going to do the inspection, guys, predominantly through visual and through palpation. Palpation is basically, it means we're doing the examination either with your fingers or your palms or your hand, basically. When it comes to the body score conditioning, guys, there's 2 tables that I've seen. I've seen the ones where it goes from 1 to 5. Generally that's used on dairy cattle, and then you get 1 to 9, which is generally used on beef cattle. So I'm using the 1 to 9 on the 2 girls that I've got here today. So 1 being the top end of the chart. It's basically it's where it's extremely or severely thin. All ribs and bones and structures are easily visible, and the cow is physically weak. Now at the other end of the spectrum is 9. Now 9 is very rarely seen, guys. It's very obese. It's highly unlikely you're going to get a 9 if your cattle or livestock are in a pasture grazing system where they're actually walking to forage. Where you're going to get 9, guys, is at your feedlot where they're packed in and they're limited to movement, and they've got an open tap or open slather to grain. That's where you're going to get a 9. Otherwise, I really don't think you're going to get a 9 when they're foraging for their own pasture, guys, or foraging for their own pasture. Right, guys, I've got one in the chute. It's going to be easy for me to talk about the areas that I'll be looking at during this examination on this cow, and then I'll put you on the tripod because it's a lot easier for me to do I need both hands to do this examination, guys. So I'll show you the areas that I'll be looking at. So basically I'll be looking at this area here, which is called the pin bone. I'll be looking at this area here, which is called the hip bone or the hook bone. I'll be looking at the short ribs, which are the ribs that run along the top here. And also I'll be looking at the rib cage here. I'll be looking at the loin area, which is across here. The backbone is obviously the spine across there. And I'll be looking at the tail head. And the area between the hip and the hook and the pin bone, this area here. So what I'll do, guys, without further ado, I'll put you on the tripod and I'll start this examination. So I'll start my palpation around the pin bone here, guys. So what you're feeling for is actually fat cover. So I've got a bit of fat cover there, guys, over top of that. Hip bone. It's not sharp, so there's a layer of fat. Now with the upper ribs, guys, what you're looking for is, if they're sharp, it means they're in a poor state, but these aren't sharp, so there's obviously a layer of fat over these short ribs. And rub my hand over it and palpate it. They're sort of rounded, which means there's a layer of fat over the top. With the backbone, guys, there's no visible signs of the backbone there. So it's got a layer of fat over it. And the loin area, you can feel the muscle, guys. It's not hollow, so it's full as well. When it comes to the ribs, I can't feel the ribs, so that's a good sign, guys. There's a layer of fat over the ribs. And when it comes to this area here, guys, between the hip and the pin bone, you're looking for any indentations. There is a slight indentation there, guys. That can be filled out a little bit more, but it's not too bad. And the tail head, there is slight fat over the tail head. I wouldn't say it's predominant. There's no rolls that I can notice. I just feel for these ribs one more time. Can't see feeling in the back. Maybe there's a couple at the front. It's hard to see on black cows, guys, the ribs when they stick out, especially on Galloways because they're so furry, but I can feel a couple of ribs up there, so she's not in bad condition, guys. I'd probably give her a 5, which, when you look at a 5, guys, it's a moderate to thin, so the last 2 or 3 ribs can be seen, but in this case you can't see them because of the colour, but I can feel them. But there's little evidence of fat around the brisket area. There's not much there at all. And also over the ribs and the tailbone. There's not much there at all. So she's not in bad condition, guys. I'd probably give her a 5 out of 9. So we'll go on with the second cow now, guys. But before I do, what I want to do is actually want to treat them all for worms. I generally don't treat for worms because my livestock I've got here, I keep their head out of the ground. But I want to go through that at the end of the video, why I don't worm. But these I do, guys, because I don't know their history. So with the worming solution, guys, you want to go from their shoulder right back to their tailbone and evenly distribute across. Make sure you've got the gloves on, guys, because like I said, it is poison. Good girl, good girl, good girl, good girl, good girl, good girl. So I'll do my inspection on the second cow now. She's obviously in a bit worse of condition, well, a lot worse condition than the first cow, so I start at the pin bone. Yeah, there's not much fat at all, guys. It's pretty sharp, and even this hip bone here, or hook bone, there's no fat cover at all. That's really pointy there. I go to the short ribs now, guys, which is up here. Run my hand along. Yeah, they're pretty sharp. Yeah, there's hardly any, or maybe a little bit, but nowhere near. I can easily identify those short bones. In that loin area, it's a bit hollow. The backbone, even though it's hard to visibly see this backbone through their colour, guys, but yeah, I can run my hand over and there's no fat cover at all. I'll go for the hips, I'll go for the ribs, I should say. Oh, those ribs are really standing out, guys. Not on the other cow, you run the hand across and it's hard to identify. You picked up the last, say, 2 or 3 ribs, but this one here, all the way along. And look at her brisket. Yeah, there's no fat cover at all on the brisket. So, and you can see this area between the hook or the hip bone and the pin bone, it's very sunk in compared to the other cow, guys. And I'll wait till she finishes here, guys. And as for the tail head, there's no fat cover at all there, guys. That's just bone. See the bone there? Yeah, so she's in a poor state, guys. As for the body conditioning score of this one, guys, I'd say with the one I spoke about before, they're actually got to show signs of physical weakness. So the only difference between a 1 or 2 is there's not much difference in the appearance apart from they're not showing physical signs of weakness. Like this girl doesn't show physical signs of weakness. She's been walking around in here for the last 7 days. She's out in the paddock, I've kept an eye on her, and she can walk easy enough, so she's not physically showing signs of weakness. She may be limping because of a sore leg, but she's definitely not weak. So when it comes to 3 is very thin, which is more the case here. So there's no fat on the ribs, which there's definitely no fat here, guys. And there is some muscle still. You can feel a little bit of muscle, so there is signs of muscle. And the backbone can be easily seen, easily visible. So what I've just covered there is a 3. So it's bordering, I'd say, between 2 or 3. If I had to call it, I would say predominantly more of a 2 than a 3, because she's in a bad way, guys. So she will have to definitely pick up condition before she can go to a bull, otherwise the bull will harm her because she won't be able to carry the load of the bull. And there's a good chance that in this condition she will stay open. Her body won't allow her to fall pregnant because of the state she's in. So if I did try and put her over a bull in this state, there's a good chance she would stay open, meaning she wouldn't calve back for you. She wouldn't produce a calve or allow herself to fall pregnant because she knows she's not healthy. Right, guys, I'm just going to go ahead and worm her as well and then let her out. So at this point you might be asking yourself, where is a good number to be positioned on the body conditioning score table? I'd say between a 5 and a 6, guys. More so lean towards the 6, because like I mentioned before, you want your cows be between a 5 and a 7 for breeding. That way they've got a bit of fat on them. That way they've got a bit of room to move or a bit of fat to lose when they're breeding back to you. So I'd say a 6, guys, would be predominantly what you're looking for in a cow to be bred. And 6, guys, what it says for a 6 is it's a good smooth appearance throughout the entirety of the animal. So what that means is you've got some fat deposits over the brisket and over the tail head. The ribs are covered and the back appears rounded. So you've got no backbones there at all, guys. It's rounded over top. So I'd say a 6, guys, is where you want to be for your animals. Not only just when you're breeding back, but a good healthy point to be throughout the year as well. Especially going into winter, you want a bit of extra fat cover. Not that it worries us in Australia, that's more so in the United States. So guys, what I want to cover now is why I don't worm. And this is the very reason why I don't worm here, guys. You can see the height of this pasture. I only graze this pasture 1/3 of the height down. So that's probably 1.5 to 2 foot now, guys. So I'd probably only graze that to about there. So I'm leaving a good 1.25 foot of grass behind. I'm not grazing the heads of my livestock in the ground, and that's where you're going to pick up the worms, guys, or pick up the diseases when they're forcing them to continual graze in the dirt. And also, guys, there's other reasons why also is I'm not making them graze where they defecate and where they urine. They're only in the paddock, in the cells, 12 hours. Remember, I'm moving them twice a day. So they're only fresh poos that they're doing. They're not staying there for the flies to come in to lay their eggs and then they swarm, or the worms. They're moving every 12 hours. I'm not forced, so they're going to fresh pasture and they're not coming back eating where they've defecated, like I just said. And also, because I'm resting it for 35 to up to 45 days, it's self-sanitizing. In Queensland we've got hot weather, and because I know I've got microbes in the ground because of the moisture over the 2 years I've been cell grazing. I've got the armour, I've got the moisture in the ground. What it does is I've got the microbes and the worms now, they come up and do the sanitize. So within days after of moving the girls in that cell, the worms are coming up, pulling that poo to the ground. The grubs are up, taking it, the dung beetles are taking it in the ground, the microbes are doing their work. So I can come back now within 2 weeks and all you got is that husk of that hardened surface of that poo on the ground. And within 45 days, generally they're gone, guys. So it's self-sanitizing because I'm giving it a long rest period before I bring the girls in. And I'm letting the microbes and the worms and the dung beetles do the sanitizing for me in the heat. And it's recovered, and then I graze it another third. So there's no reason for me to worm my cattle because, you know, I'm not grazing in the dirt. It's self-sanitizing because I've left it for a long time, and I don't lock my animals in confinement where they are pooing and urinating at the same place. That's where I'm lucky. We don't get snow, and I don't have to lock them into a compound and put hay on layer upon layer on layer like I do in the States to keep it sanitized in a state where they're not sleeping in their defecation. They're always adding that armour on top, but that's an added bonus because then they've got good compost at the end of the year, which they can use for gardens, which we don't have over here because we don't barn graze ours at winter time. Some people don't. Some people, as we know, leave them in the snow, so they haven't got that issue of having to put the layers of mulch down. So that's probably it, guys. I think I've covered everything. So if you like what you're hearing, guys, if you're a regular on this channel, please take the time to subscribe if you like the information. Like I said, I'm only a small channel, guys, and it's helps me grow the channel and bring you guys more education material. So that's probably it. Have a good morning, have a great afternoon, and have a terrific evening, guys, wherever you're watching this from, and we'll catch you later.